This is the Palmetto Politics page, and I am Shannon Grady, and my co-host here is.
John Cummings, good morning.
And folks, we got a lot to talk about today, not the least of which is our state convention for the GOP coming up this Saturday in Columbia, one of the high schools there. We also have last week was supposed to be the last week of legislative session, but Governor McMaster says, no, we've got more work to be done. So he called everybody back. And finally, after very long years, in 2 days, we finally have the Durham Report in. And folks, it's everything we expected, and nothing's going to happen. But first, before we get into that, right, John?
Pretty much.
We're going to talk a little bit about Governor McMasters and calling folks back in and bills that are going to be seen this week. John and I were just discussing which bills we thought should be discussed and which ones should not be discussed. So, John, you were saying your thoughts on the abortion bill?
Yeah, I mean the bills that they should have dealt with up front are the ones that got hung over and they didn't really come to a consensus on anything, and then they were just going to pick up their baseballs and go home. I mean, it's just nuts. And the governor ordered them back in. The abortion bill, I know that they've apparently amended it to go to 12 weeks. Look, in the grand scheme of things, would I like it to be 6 weeks? Of course. But if we're headed in the right direction and we can get it to 12 weeks, for now, I'm good with that.
Right.
We don't want to be the destination location. You don't want to be up there at 20, 22 weeks when all the other states around you are back at 12. And,
Right.
when you look at, everybody always likes to point to Europe. Oh, Europe is so cultured and everything. You go around Europe, most of their abortion laws are 12 weeks, most of them. And those are some very, very, very quote unquote progressive countries. So
Yeah.
if we can peel it back to 12 weeks, hey, I'm all for that. I know that North Carolina, they're going to try to override the governor's veto today because they had it back to 12 weeks.
Right.
I think that incrementally it's a good step. Anything that's going in the right direction is a good step. Is it what we want? No.
Right.
And then there are other bills, of course, but really, when you really look at it, all of it, the entire political landscape in South Carolina, the fact that there is a supermajority for Republicans and they can't pass these bills tells you all you need to know about the quote unquote party and the leadership of the party.
Right. Well, it's interesting because it's Senate Bill 474 by Senator Grooms. It's called the Fetal Heartbeat and Protection from Abortion Act. It's still listed on the bad bills because in the defense of life, any life is worth defending. And so that's why it's on there. But I agree with John that I would rather see a 12-week limit than we let it continue on with 20 weeks and we're a destination location. For new bill says it updates the so-called heartbeat bill, which is post-Roe. It sets a 12-week limit, preserves the rights of rape and incest for exceptions, repeals the language that is unnecessary post-Roe, and it repeals the existing statutes that were enacted back in 1970s that were used as a base previous heartbeat bill, which was recently done by the South Carolina Supreme Court. The committee amendment rewrites the bill in ways resembling the Human Life Protection Act, which was passed earlier in the year. The analysis below pertains to the committee version of the bill. The fiscal impact is considered about $500,000. Objections are one, that it's unconstitutional based on the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which expressly prohibits states from infringing on the rights and liberties afforded to citizens of the United States. He says the bill brings up two central questions. One, do citizens of the United States have a God-given inalienable right to life? And therefore, born children in the United States, persons vested with the rights of a citizen, of a United States citizen. If so, then you must conclude that this bill violates all three clauses of the 14th Amendment in the following ways. Clause 1, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. And then he lists this underneath that. And of course, clause 2, no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Of course, no unborn child ever committed a crime, certainly not worthy of death or any crime for that matter. And clause 3, no state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. And, if you're terminating a child's life, I would definitely declare that that is not equal protection of the law. So those are the issues that Mr. Hill makes. And while I agree with him, John and I said, let's get this 12 weeks protection on there so that we're not a destination location. And then in the next session, we get it back to where we had it at 6 weeks at the heartbeat bill, and possibly ultimately no abortions whatsoever. So we'll see what we can do in that area. But those are some of the bills that are on the bad bill sheet. Now, what's interesting is, again, folks, we still constitutional carry, and we're a red state. John, what's going on? What is it, like 27 other states have constitutional carry?
Like I said, we the people are red, but the legislature is not. It's just
Right.
not. And you're going to continue to see these issues pop up until we get control of this party. There's too many weak-kneed people up there in Columbia that just refuse to take a stand, and probably more importantly, they don't listen to their constituents. They just don't. They'd rather listen to the cabal that's up there running the show, and that's really beyond disconcerting. To get back to the abortion thing for 1 second, for those of you who think that we're kind of selling out, we're not, and just think about the amount of children between 12 and 20 weeks whose lives would be saved if we go to the 12-week on the road to 6.
Yeah.
That's the idea for me incrementally. That's a tremendous savings of life. Is it what we would like? No, we'd like more, but we can work in that direction. But if you think about all the abortions that would be prevented between 12 and 20 weeks, I think it's more than worth it.
That's 2 full months of additional lives being taken that we can prevent. One of the arguments I heard, actually not from South Carolina, I'm trying to think, it was Alabama. It was a southern state, I don't remember, and it was an old who actually had sponsored the bill for 6 weeks, and then he was, talked to and whatever, and the discussion was made that, well, listen, a lot of women at 6 weeks don't even know they're pregnant. So, if they don't know they're pregnant, and then or week 9 or 10, is it fair to them that they never had the opportunity to even stop the abortion or stop the baby because they didn't know they were pregnant? So that's why he actually went back and voted against his own bill because of that reason. And so he said he put in an amendment for 12 weeks. I don't remember if it passed or not. John, where are we at in a society where people are out there practicing indiscriminately, procreating, if you will, and procreation is the act of creating a life. That is what it is to be having sex. And you're doing not because you want to have a child, but because you just, for the moment, the fulfillment that you get from having that intimacy. There's a responsibility that needs to come with that. And again, that goes back to the family. And I don't want to make this a show about police, your morals and your ethics, but at the end, some real work to do in our nation.
About responsibility. That's all. It's about everything. Not to flip the script, but student loans. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You signed on, but you didn't understand that you had to pay all this money and all this interest, and you're 18, 19 years old signing these documents, and you didn't understand that. But we'll let you switch genders when you're 12.
Right. 12, how about me?
Everything's upside down. And you really wonder which direction it's going to go in, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I guess one of the buried leads in all of this with the abortion issue is that, the left, they love to scream science. Well, if you look at the scientific advances we've made technologically when it comes to these live MRIs, and you see exactly what a child is in the womb at 6 weeks, at 8 weeks, at 10 weeks, at 12 weeks, it kind of threw in the garbage that idea that, it's just a clump of cells. Well, guess what? You can see it clear as day. It's not just a clump of cells. Right. So, that's one case where we really have science on our side. You can't point to that and say it's not a life. You just can't.
Right. Something else that I think is interesting. I was listening. I think it was Ben Shapiro. I listened to a lot of Coast, and it may have been Ben Shapiro. It could have been Charlie Kirk. But anyway, I was listening to this guy talking to Mark Robinson, who's running for lieutenant governor in North Carolina. Might have been
he's running. Yeah, he's running for governor. Yeah, he's running for governor.
Yeah.
He is
currently the lieutenant governor. He's running for governor. And he was talking about, and the blacks within the Democratic Party do not embrace this gender ideology.
No.
And so here once again is an opportunity for Republicans to find common ground and embrace the black members of our nation in a way that we could bring them into our camp and say, okay, let's join forces because we agree this gender ideology is absolutely it's crazy. It's craziness. Okay. And let's see where we can find common ground on the few other issues that we disagree on, whether it be social programs or whatever the case may be. Because I believe we're that far apart, John. I really don't. I don't
No,
think we're that
and
far apart.
that's always been one of my complaints about the Republican Party in general, is that they're very comfortable campaigning, in the echo tunnel, in the echo chamber. They'll
Yeah.
just go and preach to their own crowd. And very often, more often than not, they will not go into predominantly Democrat areas and try to share ideas. They just won't. And that's an issue, because going forward, you need to expand your base. You
Yep.
can't be satisfied with the base that you have. And even in a quote unquote supermajority state, look where it got us. You need to build the party the right way, and you need to build it ideologically. And like you said, we have far more in common with many on the quote unquote left, many Democrats, because they are conservatives when it comes to particularly to social issues.
Social issues,
And I
yeah.
think when it comes to economic issues, they are as well. So we need to do a much better job as a party of going out into these areas and preaching the message of populism, because that's what we're talking about here. And you're looking at somebody, not to make this about me, but you're looking at somebody that did that his entire campaign, because I was in a district where there was only 35,000 Republicans in the whole district. 720,000 people, 35,000 registered Republicans. So who do you think I was campaigning to? Who do you think I was preaching the message to? It was all people who were Democrats. And surprise, a lot of them would take the time and listen to what I had to say. They were interested in what I had to
Uh,
say.
Bella Christian just put up I think kind of goes into what we're talking about getting people involved. And she said she believes that the SCGOP convention should be televised live for transparency and for educational purposes for everyone around the state of South Carolina. What better way to open the doors to our communities and get people involved? It's time we take South Carolina back one county at a time. And she said, who's with me? Well, I'm with you, Bella,
Yeah,
because
no
I
doubt.
agree.
Great
If we
idea.
did that, and if we really stood on the principles that we claim the GOP platform is made up of, we would have a growing base, not a shrinking base. And hopefully we'll get a chairman who doesn't want to limit our representation as the current one does. Mr. Drew McKissick has spoke out wanting to limit the number of state representatives that can attend the state convention. I think the number was 501 is what I'd heard. And I think right now eligible to attend, I believe it's just shy of 700 people are eligible to attend this time. But I think we need to have as many people as possible involved, not a limited number of people. And I agree wholeheartedly that you're right. We need to reach out to, and it's not just Black Americans; it's also Hispanic Americans. They're all and Asian Americans. They're all very conservative when it comes to functions. Even though you might say, well, there's a lot of single family, mom only or dad only or grandparents, whatever. At the core, they believe that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and you can't take children and start, mutilating their bodies or chemically castrating them and to go. And so this is an opportunity, and we should not miss this opportunity. We need to reach out now
Yeah, and
and get
all of those issues. I mean, school choice. I mean, who's stuck in failing schools? People on the lower end of the economic scale. So school choice. Crime. Who does crime affect the most? People in lower economic stratus. I mean, that's who you want to talk to, regardless of what color they are. It doesn't matter.
right.
All the people are in the same boat. They're all struggling, and they're looking to the government not for necessarily assistance, but just for another choice.
Yeah.
They're just looking for a new way to do things. And as you see crime rates go up, and education, the education system, all the test scores have leveled off. They'll tell you, oh, the test scores are better. That's because they made the test easier.
Yeah.
We're not, I've been through that how many times? Oh, the numbers went up. Yeah, you made the test easier. So, across the board, there are tons of messages and all the ideological issues that are out there. I think more often than not, if you actually get the opportunity to speak with people, quote unquote, on the other side, um, they'll listen to you, and very often they'll agree with you. And a lot of people don't want to admit that, and they don't want to find out.
Right.
A lot of people are just afraid to go into areas and be challenged on their thoughts. I think that that's one of the great things about this system when it works, is that free and open debate, if you can do it without being, protested or canceled or whatever else. If you can do it, that's an opportunity you have to take advantage of. And if you get canceled, well, then, at least you went out there and tried. And I think that people will respect you for it.
Something else I want to say is, you and I are both educators, and I've often questioned. We had something put in through our system, our government recently, the PACE program, that's going to allocate money to a set number of people, and a small fraction of the number of students in our nation. In our state rather. I absolutely believe in the voucher program. I've heard Democrats say, "Oh no, if you let the money follow the student, then it's going to hurt the public schools." Blah 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 blah. I disagree with that, folks, and let me tell you why. As a public school teacher and a private school teacher, I've done both. I've taught both. I'm telling you right now, if you have more students able to go to another, okay, be it a private, secular school, whatever the case may be, that is going to help them. And it's going to help the public schools, because now, instead of the teacher being in the classroom with 32 kids, maybe she's in the classroom with 24 kids, a much easier number to be able to teach and instruct and work with one-on-one. It's a valued improvement, in my opinion. And then that money that they get is going to continue to be able to be useful. And at the end of the day, do you have any kids in school, John?
Oh, me, no.
Yeah. Okay. So you and your wife are still paying taxes
Right.
to help out the schools. So sure, that takes money away from the school. Your money is still going to go to the public school. That is going to continue to be the case. You're talking about a very small percentage of students will have this money going, but it gives the parents an opportunity. And I just believe in my heart of hearts, if I go into the neighborhoods, whether it be Republican neighborhoods, the Democratic neighborhoods, and I say, okay, to be able to financially afford to put your son or daughter in a better school, would you take that chance, or would you say, no, I'm going to keep them in the public school they're in? And I find it really hard to believe that anybody is going to say, oh, I want to keep my kid in this failing public school because they're not learning anything, and that's fine with me. I don't think that's
Yeah. And it's
going to be the case.
and it's become a generation after generation after generation issue for many families, that all of their children went to failing schools.
Yes.
And that is just, you're basically locking yourself into poverty. There's no way out of it. The only way out of poverty is through education. That's it. And if you only have one choice and your choice is a failure, well, guess what? You're going to continue to fail. And when I ran up in New York, I mean, obviously the numbers were a lot different. I mean, New York City, they were spending $26,000 per pupil.
Right.
And my suggestion was that you just give the parents, and I would do that here too. I mean, I think it's what I spend 16,000 here.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, if you just gave the parents a voucher for $10,000,
yeah,
that means that if the same money is still going to the educational budget, that means you'll have fewer children in the public school system, which eases overcrowding. But you'll also have more money per pupil to spend, because there's $6,000 extra from every kid that gets a voucher.
Yes.
And I would start the voucher system in the lower income areas, because those are the most need. And if if you're at a certain point when it comes to the poverty level, you have to figure out what the formula is. Well, you let those people get it first. I am not a person who believes that people who are in the upper end of the economic scale should get a voucher. I just don't. I mean, I don't feel that way at all. I mean, they can afford to send their kids to private school, and it's one of the things that success brings, and it's a beautiful thing. But people that are continually stuck in a failing public school system, and when you look at what happened in New York, Catholic education is almost done up there. It's almost done. I mean, it was the foundation of success for many around the city, around the state, and around the country. All you have to do, I mean, if I point out, if you look at the Supreme Court and look at the amount of people on the Supreme Court that came out of Catholic education, particularly in New York City, it's mind-boggling. Even people that you wouldn't be proud of, like Justice Sotomayor, are not my favorite, but she went to Catholic school in New York City. And Nino Scalia went to Catholic school in New York City. I mean, a lot of them, they went to Catholic schools. They went to private schools. They got a great education. And they came from not a lot, not a lot. So, allowing parents to have a choice is of the utmost importance, because the great the great bridge out of poverty is, of course, through education.
Yeah, I was listening to, and it was Dan Bongino that I was listening to when he was talking to Governor Sarah Sanders out there in Arkansas. The Democrats push to allow everybody. I didn't catch the whole thing in terms of how this came about, but I understand now that people that are overweight can now start suing if they don't get a job, or they get to claim some sort of medical exemption, or,
Everybody's a victim.
yeah. Dan gave a great analogy, and he said, if you start letting everybody have this benefit, he said it's like going into a store and you got 10 parking spaces for people that are handicapped, and 1,000 other spaces for the others. And he said, if you start saying, well, everybody should have access to the parking spaces, then what's going to happen is the 10 parking spaces that are designed for handicap will be taken up by people who are not handicapped. And then the individuals who actually need those parking spaces will be stuck parking in the back, and then they'll have to make their way to the front. And so he said that doesn't benefit the people that need the benefits. It's just like you said, if we body and don't target those who are under this threshold of economic income, then you're not helping the ones that really need the help the most. Like, I will fully admit, we send our son to a private school, so obviously right now economically, would I love to have the tuition be less? Sure. But I recognize exactly, love to send their child to a private school or to another school, and they can't because they financially can't afford it. So I don't want to take money away from individuals who need it, because I want every kid to learn. I want every kid to have an opportunity to get a good education so they have a good head start into becoming productive citizens for our nation.
Now, just in the spirit of full disclosure, I taught private school, but I also
Right.
taught private school in an area where 40% of our students lived in the poorest congressional district in the United States, which is the old New York 15. And I had many students over the years. It was an all boys school. I had many students over the years who left school and went to work for 4 or 5, 6 hours after school so they could pay their own tuition because mom couldn't afford it.
Wow. That's
Right.
insane.
Yeah, but they had to do it because they knew they weren't going to get an education in the public schools.
All right. So before we jump on to next topic, if you have issues, concerns about our education system, please, again, send us an email or send us a message. Jump onto our page, comment under the page, and we'll address your questions and concerns. We appreciate anybody interacting with us, because we want to make sure that everybody in the state of South Carolina has an opportunity to have their voice heard. State legislators who do follow this page, and so they're seeing it. We are growing in our audience as well as in our reputation, and we want people to know that we are a place where you can come in the state of South Carolina, not just Horry County or a few other counties. We want everybody across the state. Questions out here for your representatives to answer. So please know that's what we're here for. Now I want to jump back to the state convention again, because this Thursday evening we're going to have a special show, and I know John is he has another life outside of this.
I'll be
this
on
podcast.
assignment. I'll be on
So he's going to
assignment.
be on assignment, and he won't be able to join us, but that's okay, because it's not going to be the style that we're doing right now, where he and I are kind of doing some talking. It's going to be more of an interview style program, where any person who is running for the chairman's position of the state SCGOP, they have to be able to answer questions and respond to any questions that individuals have. I have sent out, so everybody's been invited. If you are running and I don't have your private email or message or text message, please note you are invited. So if you're running, right now I know we have Jeff Davis, we have Zoe, I believe there's a guy by the name of Mark Powell, and another gentleman, Mr. Cox, I believe is his name. Those are the names that I have thus far that are individuals running. So if you are running for the chairman position, or actually, I really should say any position, if you're running for second chair, whatever, please feel free to come on and me a message here on the page that you're running, and I will certainly give you an opportunity to come on. But we're going to do that Thursday night starting at 7 p.m. so that people have an opportunity to be off from work, and it's not so late. Chad Caton did one last night on I'm Fired Up. Started at 9 p.m. and yesterday, so at 9 o'clock I was in bed. I was exhausted, and today I'm paying for it. My knee's killing me. But anyway, so again, 7 p.m. So for those of you who have to get in bed early, hopefully that won't be too late for you. You can join in, and any questions you post in the comment section, I'll pass on to the candidates. And if you are running for the chairman position specifically, but if you are running for other positions at the state level, please feel free to join in and we'll include you in this. So that's going to start at 7 and it'll run until, I mean, I probably won't go much past 8:30 because I don't think we need more than an hour and a half. But if we need more than an hour, please plan to join us. That is May 18th, Thursday, May 18th at 7 p.m. Join in and participate by asking questions or making comments in the comment section. So look forward to having you here. We will not do our morning show that Thursday because we'll be doing the evening show instead. Now, speaking on the state convention, there are a lot of delegates from Ori. I think last time we were eligible to have 48 state delegates, but because of the huge increase in our population, it went up to 61, which is great. So there are 61 delegates and, of course, 61 alternates that are allowed to go. So we will hopefully see all of them going. I've been talking with some of the delegates across our county that are planning to go, and they've asked questions about, okay, who else is running? They want information because they're not sold on Drew McKissick. They're not exactly pleased because Drew McKissick is the guy who put in the laws to limit your representation. He's a guy who spoke on behalf of a bill that would make it more difficult for you to seek any adjudication if you find that you've been cheated at the ballot box, either as a voter or as a candidate. He's put some things in place, not mind you, but the idea that, he gets to determine, or the chair gets to determine the amount of time that you're allocated to speak out about your particular voting issue is troublesome. It's troublesome. So,
and I think that, if you're a delegate and you get to vote, I think the thing that you have to ask yourself, regardless of what your inclinations are going in, the thing you have to ask yourself is, am I happy with the state of the Republican Party in South Carolina? And if you ask yourself that question and you say, oh, yeah, it's great, well, then we know how you're going to vote. But I can't imagine that anybody who's paying strict attention is happy with what's going on in this state, particularly at the legislative level. I mean, I think the fact that you have a supermajority here and we are ranked where we are ranked conservatively, and you look at the legislation that's gone through, the Green New Deal stuff, and the check to Volkswagen Scout, and just the inability to take care of all of the other issues that we just spoke about. Well, some of we spoke about, and some we didn't get to, like the constitutional carry, right? All of those things. The fact that they can't even get together on these things, that starts at the top. And if you're happy with the way the Republican Party is going in this state, well, then you know what you can do. And if you're not happy, you know what you can do as well. And that's all I ask anybody who's a delegate to do, is ask themselves this question going forward.
Right. And I'd also make the point that initially there were counties that had problems with Drew McKissick and were kind of becoming boisterous. Horry County was one of those. Greenville County is obviously one of those. And now there are 9 counties that are fully in revolt, if you will, against the Drew McKissick leadership. So this is spreading as people become more and more aware of what's happening. They're not happy. And it is time for a change. And one of the things that Drew has been, sort of bragging about, and just on the surface of it, you think, well, that is a good thing. But if you really dig a little bit deeper, and I don't mean much, you don't have to go about a quarter of an inch below the surface to figure out, oh, this is bad. Into the state EC meetings and said, oh, guess what? We've had 2 more Democrats leave the Democratic plantation and join the Republican Party. And everybody's, oh, wait a minute. What epiphany did they have? I go back to that. What was it that made them say, I am disavowing platform I no longer and I now embrace the Republican conservative platform? What happened? And do they really do that? Because far, far too often what we have is a Luke Rankin situation where he leaves the Democratic Party because they redrew the lines and put him in that he couldn't win if he ran as a Democrat. And so he sent a letter to the Democratic Party saying, hey, I'm sorry, I got to leave you guys because I can't get elected as a Democrat. So I'm going to tell them I'm a Republican. But then he has not changed his voting philosophy at all. He continues to vote as a Democrat, again, to the point that there are two other named Democrats in our conservative voting records than does Luke Rankin. He is past time to be gone. And unfortunately, the person that has recently announced she's going to run against him is just another Democrat. Can you guess who it is? John, do you know who's announced she's running against Luke Rankin?
I didn't see it, no.
Colonel Reese the Buffoon is going to run against Luke Rankin. So we have a Democrat running against a Democrat, both of which they're claiming the Republicans.
Well, does she have to resign to do that? That would be that would take care of one issue around here. But it's my whole thing is this: when you see the way you have someone like Senator Rankin, right? When you have people who quote unquote are Republicans, and then you see the state chair and other people in the party in the apparatus try to institute a rule that says you can't campaign or endorse somebody in a primary against said quote unquote Democrat Republican, that's all you need to know. They're not serious about it. They're just not serious about making this a red state, which is what it is. They're not interested in representative politics at all. They're just not. And to me, that's another issue. The other part of it is, you know, when Chairman McKissick became vice chair of the National Party, well, how much of his time does that take on a daily basis? And are you able to wear both hats? It's kind of like the Heather Ammons Crawford, Russell Fry thing. You know, can you do both? And my answer would be, unless you show us that you can, we have to assume that, guess what? You can't. Not unless you're working 20 hours a day. So, I mean, that's something, you know, unless that job as vice chair is just completely, you know, titular in nature, that there's nothing to it. You know, it's kind of like being a vice president.
I guess the vice president of the United States.
Right. Which
and he's got time to go around and creating all these LLCs and getting money from foreign entities.
Right. Like I think John Adams said it was the most useless position ever created, and he would know. But you know, that's something that has to be looked at as well. You know, do you have the time? And you combine that with the fact that, in my opinion, the Republican Party is nowhere near where it should be. We should be the leader in this country when it comes to conservative values at the legislative level. We should be first, because that's how conservative we the people are. But the legislature is nowhere near that.
Right. The legislature is not a reflection of we the people by
not
any
even
means,
close.
shape, or form. And that kind of brings us into really what I want to talk about in the last half. And folks, I know normally this is 100% a state. We talk about the Palmetto State, which is South Carolina, but I would be remiss if we did not bring up the Durham Report, because even though that is a national issue, it definitely has implications for folks here in South Carolina, because we were one of the strongest supporters of Donald Trump. You know, and then he went on to win the election, as I recall, in 2016, and then in 2020, he got the most votes any president has ever received from the state of South Carolina. So I think it's important that we take a look at what came out in this Durham Report, and more to that point, what's the repercussions of this investigation and the findings of this investigation? I kind of want to ask, what the heck took 4 years and 2 days for you to get to this information? So what are your thoughts about this Durham Report, John?
Well, from the top down, let's start with the obvious. What this report showed you is how bad a candidate Hillary Clinton was, because it was a rigged election and she lost anyway. I mean, that to me, that's all you need to know. And all this information that came out, the fact that they lied, particularly James Comey, that they lied in FISA court to get warrants. I mean, everything that they did was scripted from the top down. President Obama was in on it. Joe Biden was in on it. The FBI was in on it. The CIA was in on it. Everybody was in on it. And that shows you exactly how deep the deep state is. And I remember when President Trump, well, then Citizen Trump, was running, and he was saying, you know, they tapped my phones in Trump Towers. You know, everything, they're listening to everything that I do. And everybody's like, this guy's nuts, right? I've said this from the beginning. President Trump's campaign slogan this time should be Trump was right, because he was right about everything. I mean, he's been all along. He's been right. Everything that we would call conspiracy theorists for believing. Well, guess what? Now it was all true. It was all true, and they can't. They're still trying to get him. He's the most vetted person in the history of American politics. They're still trying to get him, so they can't get him. So now they're going to go after Giuliani today. I saw that somebody came forward and said, "Oh, he tried to sexually abuse me, sexual harassment." Millions of dollars. We have audio, we have video, we have all this stuff. Well, they're only going after Rudy to get to Trump, because so far they have been unable to get to Trump. And part of me thinks that how long are they going to do this until they realize that you're not getting them? Right. And that's the scary part, And one more thing, the fact that the intelligence community, yet again, who is really by law prohibited from interfering in domestic investigations. The fact that they are in the middle of this yet again tells you that we need to dismantle the intelligence apparatus in this country and just completely rebuild it. They have to completely rebuild it. I mean, it's Eisenhower warned about this back in the 50s that this was going to happen, and it's been a disaster. And whenever it seems to cross the line, well, they peel it back a little and then they go right back to where they were. So, I mean, this just from the top down. And the thing we have to remember is that President Obama was in on this from the start. And President Obama was in charge when Joe Biden was allegedly involved in all this pay-for-play stuff. That was on President Obama's watch. So if you're going to come at me and say, well, we're going to run Michelle Obama, guess what? Everything's going in the fire. Everything's going in the fire. You knew all about it. You did everybody wrong, and we're paying a tremendous price.
Yeah, I agree with you so much. And I just I've got a shirt that actually says I identify as a conspiracy theory. My pronouns are I told you so.
Yeah.
I think that's very appropriate for today. But I think what everyone else, myself included, has been is like we all knew this. Everything that he said yesterday in the Durham Report or the day before yesterday when it came out, every single thing he said, we already knew. We already knew. We knew that they had all this information. We knew they spied on Trump. We knew they made up allegations. Now that we know that it's factually been proven, here's what I expect to see. And I think most of the electorate expects to see the same thing. First and foremost, I think that every single media channel out there that was hyping this story and got Pulitzer Prize, awards for their coverage of the Russia, they should all have to go on the record and publicly apologize for having said that. And if they spent 100 hours covering that story, they need to spend 100 hours covering the Durham Report, evidence revealed, and they have to spend that much time recanting they ever said and say, well, that wasn't true. That wasn't true. And that's what I think. That's first. Okay. Second, if there is anybody left in the FBI or the CIA or within the government bureaucracies that had any role in this whole investigation, they should be fired immediately fired. Like what's his name that Trump fired when he came in? He was the guy that kind of headed this whole nonsense up at the FBI. Oh, his name just went right on my head. Not Comer. What was his name?
Well, Comey was the major player here, and right, James Comey.
Those individuals should be convicted and sent to jail. I don't believe any of this nonsense that, well, we didn't find any criminal activity in the Durham Report. Pardon my French here, but bullshit. Okay. Yep. There is clear criminal intent in what they did. They intended to first try to prevent him from being elected, second to try to have him impeached him, not once, but twice. They should be charged with criminal intent to thwart the leadership, the duly elected president. I don't know if you want to call it treason. I don't know what charge it would be, but there has to be a charge that they are found guilty of, and there needs to be jail time for each and every one of those individuals at that level. Anybody involved in that, all those little FBI agents that were sending the text messages and, I hate this guy, we're going to get him, whatever, they should be behind bars going, I'm so sorry. Yeah, we're not sorry. And if that doesn't happen, then we need to take a page out of the left, John. We need to do what the BLM protesters do. What is their famous crime? No peace, no justice. No justice, no peace. That's what I say. We don't get justice, there will be no peace. We need to be protesting. That's what needs to be happening.
And unfortunately, we know that the prosecutions for any of these people are probably not going to happen. And they will go to any lengths again to make sure that President Trump is not reelected. And that's why, because he's always over the target. And he was over the target when he got in. He was over target the whole time he was in office. But they delayed that investigation until he was gone. So there's going to be no prosecutions. All you have to do, I know you were talking about having people apologize and, going on for 100 hours and saying, hey, look, we'll cover the Durham Report. Not only are they not going to do that, they're doubling down. I mean, just look what happened. Like I said, you think it's a coincidence that this whole thing with Rudy Giuliani came out today? Do you think it's a coincidence that the Attorney General pulled all of the IRS investigators off the Hunter Biden case this morning? Are you kidding me? I mean, that's exactly what's going on, and they have to keep this going full tilt because they know if Trump gets back in, it's over. It's over. I mean, how many more times can you impeach the guy? I mean, the entire thing, and shame on all those Republicans who went along with the impeachment. Thank you, Tom Rice, and all those people who now don't have a job, which is great. But yeah. I mean, look at this for what it is. From the very beginning, from the time he came down the escalator with Melania, they went after him. And the reason they went after him is because he's not part of it. He's an outsider. He doesn't care. That's why he has no filter on any level. He just wants to get rid of the bad people.
Let me add a fifth point. I have my 4 points. Let me add a fifth point, courtesy of you. Any member of Congress who voted to impeach the president on the Russian collusion, you should resign immediately from office because you suck. You shouldn't be up there representing we the people. I expect immediate resignations. I demand that you resign. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. If you voted to impeach the president on the Russian collusion, I want your resignation today.
And nobody will do that because it's, and the media is not going to cover any of this. I mean, I was watching local news this morning, and the headline was the FBI admits to some missteps in the Durham Report. They admit to missteps. Lying in a FISA court is a misstep. Ruining General Flynn's life is a misstep. All of the collateral damage is a misstep. It's not a misstep. It's a gross violation of your constitutional rights. And the people who are responsible for that need to be punished. But unless and until President Trump gets back in office, it's not going to happen. And again, they will go to any lengths to make sure that Donald Trump is not 47. Believe me, they will go to any lengths. And I hate to say how far that's going to go, but they will go to any lengths because they know he's the biggest danger. And look, this is an international issue. He's the biggest danger to this whole, global structure that they want to redo. He's the biggest threat. He's the biggest threat to China. He's the biggest threat to the Green New Deal. He's the biggest threat to we the people having what we want. He's the voice of the people. Steve Bannon always says this. The one thing about President Trump, whether you like him or not, is he let us in the room. He let we the people in the room. We got to see what was going on. Everybody else wants to keep us out of the room and out of the equation. And you can see that in South Carolina at the legislative level. They want to keep us out of the room. They think they're in charge and they want to run it, accordingly. President Trump's not about that. He's about putting us in the room. He wants to hear from us. And that's what is the biggest threat to all of them, is that he really listens to we the people and the rest of them could care less.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there. I do think he lets listen to we the people. We wouldn't have gotten a Russell Fry endorsement from him. We wouldn't have gotten a Drew McKissick endorsement from him. There's a lot of people he wouldn't have endorsed if he listened to we the people. He listens to some of the establishment that he thinks are we the people, but they're not. They're the people. They're their own selves. And I'm out and say, hey, I listened to bad advice from Fauci. I did not have the constitutional authority to shut down the economy. In hindsight, that was a bad idea. And Fauci gave me bad advice that the vaccine is not what it was proposed that it was going to be when it was proposed to me. And these are the things that we need to fix going further. I've heard you. I understand you're not happy with these things. And, those are things that will not happen again because I never had the constitutional authority to do it in the first place. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, John, narcissist who's not going to say any of those things, but he should.
I think he could, and I'll tell you why I think he could. because he gets to throw it all on the people that were advising him, namely Fauci. And it was all fraudulent. It was all fraudulent. And I think that's the one ace in the hole that he has if they go after him in the debate process, if there is a debate. But when it gets to the end, he could say, hey, look, when you're a CEO, which is what he is, no matter where he is, he's a CEO, he's the chief executive officer. You listen to the experts and you make your decision thusly. And when everybody in the medical community is coming at you and saying, hey, look, we got to shut this down, and here's why. And then we have to go forward with these vaccines, and here's why. And they present all this stuff to you. Meanwhile, they're hiding all of the other stuff. The fact that they had been involved in gain of function research since the buried lead and all that, not to get off the topic, was that Obama shut that down. He shut down the gain of function research when he was asked to.
Went behind his back.
They went behind his back, and they ended up instead of operating these
within the United States,
experiments in the United States, he went to Wuhan.
Ukraine.
Ukraine
too.
To Ukraine.
No, I agree with you, John, and that's what I said.
And to Sudan.
Yeah, Trump has every means at his disposal to say, look, I made these decisions based on bad information. Had I known something different, I would have done something different. But instead, he's literally on the campaign. It was the right thing. He made the right choice. And I'm just going, no, you didn't. And I can't vote for you until you admit that what you got was bad intel and you made bad decisions based off of it. If you continue to say you made the right choice, you won't get my vote.
I think he'll back off a little, because if you look, he did adjust a bit. If you watch the interview on CNN, that was like the Trump from 15 and 16.
Oh man, he was kicking her teeth in.
Yeah, he was, but he was much more pointed. He wasn't as argumentative all the time, and he's very good in those town halls. I would suggest strongly that he continues to do them, because he just has that ability to connect to people. Says, hey, that was a great question. Thank you so much. Here's why. So he was, if you watch how he aligns himself with the people in the audience and against the media, that's just masterful. But he did, if you notice, he did peel it back a bit in that interview. And I think that shows that there is a cognizance on his point that he needs to adjust a bit. And I think going along he will. But boy, if you keep coming out with stuff like this and on how they've tried to destroy him, and in the process, they've basically destroyed the country. It's catastrophic. It's just been catastrophic. This.
No, I agree.
What's gone on is unbelievable.
Who doesn't think that the FBI and the CIA need to be either completely shuttered and something else created in their place, or that there needs to be a house cleaning like nothing's been seen before, you just aren't paying attention. And I've had people say, well, I think we could keep the CIA and we could keep the FBI, and I'm thinking, okay, this is guilty of assassinating a U.S. president, and now they're guilty of assassinating his time in office, if you will, and destroying his reputation in cahoots with the FBI, and that cannot be allowed to stand. The people can't simply stand by, lock people up on January 6th with no charges and kept them there for months and months and years on end. But we have credible evidence that they they did, tap his phone. They did spy on a campaign. They did trump up charges. And all of these things led to the first impeachment. I'm sorry, if that's not criminal, well, hell, nothing is.
And you know what? It makes Watergate look like a day at the beach. It really does. I mean, you can't even compare the two. It's mind-boggling, the magnitude of what this report really says. Unfortunately, nobody's going to see it, and nothing's going to get done until a serious Republican gets into office. And as far as the intel community, the 51 people who signed that letter that said that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, they need to be stripped immediately of whatever intelligence access they still have. They need to be stripped of their security clearance. The fact that Brennan still has security clearance and gets briefed is disgraceful. That's a guy that needs to be perp walked. I mean, I want to see all of these people in orange jumpsuits. I really do. I mean, obviously they get due process, but man, there are some people that still have the ability to look at intelligence on a daily basis, that they still have the security clearance, they need to be stripped immediately. Anybody who signed that document needs to be stripped right away. And that is saying, well, we just went along with it. No. Sorry.
You're out. Yeah, and I think General Miley, Millie Miley, how do you want to pronounce his
Milley,
name?
yeah, General Milley.
Who put forward the memo that said anything that Trump orders in the last months of his presidency has to first come across my desk before you act on it. That's treason. That's treason,
Well,
and he should be arrested for it, charged, and found guilty, imprisoned.
He also told his counterpart in the CCP that he would let them know if President Trump was going to do anything.
Yep. Sure did.
Should be marched out of there.
Yep.
Should be marched out of there. It's where we are now as a nation. I mean, it's just it's beyond anything I ever thought would happen. Where you have this dual system of justice, where we no longer have equal protection, where the law is not discretionary. You don't get to pick and choose. I think it was Montesquieu said the law is like death, which spares no one. That's not the case anymore. Yeah. They pick and choose, and all you have to do is look at what's going on. I mean, look at George Santos. Now, George gets what he gets, all right? Yeah. But they indicted him in 3 months. 3 months. So where's Hunter Biden? Where's Jim Biden? Where are any of the Bidens or the 12 who got money? Where are they? What's taking so long? What took the Durham Report so long? And you went out and got George Santos in 3 months? That just shows you the uneven nature of it.
Yeah.
If they did something wrong. 3 months and 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. I mean, crazy.
What about the nuclear on all the clothes? I mean, that's it. A little smack on the wrist.
Like I said, they pick and choose. And the guy at the top is the worst offender. And thank God we dodged the bullet by not putting him on the Supreme Court. And that's Merrick Garland.
Yep.
I mean, thank God. That's the one thing the Republican Senate did right, was that they held up his nomination because it was coming towards the end of Obama's administration. Thank God that guy is not on the Supreme Court, because I'll say it right here. He can sue me. I don't care. He's crooked. He's crooked as the day is long. And every time he goes up there, he lies to the American people. And that's the other thing. These people lie to the American people constantly, and they don't care. They just don't care. None of them tell the truth. None of them.
Yep. Yeah, Mayorkas is a big liar, and he's another guy impeached. We got a few minutes left, and so one of the things I want to encourage people to do is that, listen, you can't go to Washington, D.C. and protest, because they'll just arrest you on January 6th. They'll call you white supremacist, etc. But you know what? We have a slim majority in the House right now. So let's actually go to our congressional district offices and let's protest and tell them that we want people going to jail. We expect it, we demand it, and we won't stop showing up to your offices until you act on our demands. Okay. And we have the right as the people to demand it. If you do that here in South Carolina, you go to not just the Congress offices, go to Lindsey's office, go to Tim Scott's office, and tell them that this is what we expect. This is what we demand. And you better show me. Don't tell me you're going to do something. Show me that you're doing something, or I'm going to be back over and over again to protest. And if that happens in all 33 of the red states, you're going to see a shift. You're going to see pressure being brought to bear in a way that actually brings about some significant means that we have to embark Garland, and damn it, let's get it done. He ought to already be out. He probably should be in handcuffs and perp walked himself. It is time that we, the people, see actual justice taking place, and none of this lip service of, well, we showed you, and now we know it. We were right. Oh, great. We were right. Now do something. John, the people that got arrested, put in jail on January 6th, and as I understand, they're still claiming they're going to go get more of us. Grandmothers who were simply going through the halls of the Congress and got sent to jail. That's ridiculous. And these people really and truly, they stole years of a presidency from we the people who voted him into office. 2 years that he could have been able to do much more than he was able to do, because he was spending all his time fighting off false allegations.
And he lost, and the Republicans lost the midterm because of it in 18. In 18, that's why they lost. Otherwise, he could have got a lot more done than he did. Now, when it comes to the House, I think Jamie Comer's done a great job. His committee, the Oversight Committee, have done a tremendous job, and they're going to. they're just scratching the surface. Unfortunately, they're not allowed to indict people. They can hold them in contempt, but they can't indict people. And this Justice Department, no matter what recommendations the House is going to make, they're not going to take up any of it. So what I think the House has to do is they have to continue to present information to the public. Now, I know the media is going to cover up as much of it as they can, but you have to continue to put out more information and everything that you get, bank records, whatever it is, put it out there so we, the people, can see it. You know, you can say everything you want. I mean, Adam Schiff said, hey, we have information that will convict the president. He didn't have it. Well, you know what? If Representative Comer has it, let's see it. I mean, I believe that they have it. As a matter of fact, I'm sure they have it. Put it out there. Put it out there so we, the people, can see it, and make sure that the media has to respond to it. Now, you know, it can go pretty far. You can hold people in contempt of Congress, and then they can get sent to jail. You know, the last person I think that was held in contempt of Congress that got sentenced to anything was Roger Clemens about steroids. I mean, this is a little more serious than, I love baseball, but this is a little bit more serious than Roger Clemens and steroids. These are people who have changed the very fabric of this country and everything that we believe in. And these people need to be prosecuted. But all I can say to Representative Comer, and like I said, he and Marjorie Taylor Greene and everybody on that committee, I think Russell's on that committee. Everybody that's doing their work, get the information out to get the information out to the public. We have to see it. You can't just say, hey, we have it, like the Democrats did, even though they didn't have it. If you have it, put it out there. You don't have to do it, you know, in a big way. Just put it out there every day. Put something else out there every day. Just keep it coming. And I know as they peel this back, there's going to be more and more and more coming. I mean, they just scratched. Think about this. Again, they had 100 days.
We have to protest, John. We got to do what the left does. And you can't go to D.C. They'll put you in jail. So you're going to have to protest in states like South Carolina and Alabama. There were 33 Republican where you should be able to protest. And don't riot. I'm not calling for riots. I'm calling for peaceful protests where you let them know we're not going to let this go. We're not just going to be like, well, great, the Durham Report proved us we were all right. No, we want people brought to punishment. We want people punished, and we will not just simply go, well, okay, let's move on. No, somebody's got to go to jail, period. And I appreciate, as you said, what they've been doing with this committee. I appreciate what Nancy May said. It sounds great, but I'm not going to just simply clap for you because you found this information. I want action. And if it means you got to remove head of the DOJ, then do it. You know, why haven't we impeached Mayorkas? He should have already had articles of impeachment put forward multiple times. And then if they don't want to do it, we can go to other Democratic states and start. In Texas, you got Democratic congressmen in Texas. Go protest outside. We got one here. We got Clyburn, which is one of the biggest Democrats in the just outside his office. Enough of this, pardon my expression, bullshit. I'm tired of it. We need to have and demand action.
What they need to do, and there's a lot of good attorneys on that committee. What they need to do is spell out their case. I mean, get all the information that they have and go to Garland with it and say, here's the information, act on it, or you're out, or we're going to impeach you. We're going to run you up the flagpole. That's what they need to do. They need to force people to do their jobs. Yep. And like I said, because we have this uneven system of justice, you're probably not going to see it. But if he refuses to act on information that was presented to him that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that there is probable cause there, that all of this went on, and he ignores it, then you have to impeach him. And the articles of impeachment will write themselves.
Yep, exactly. And then, you know, as we can expect, the Democrats will not solve, and hopefully that's going to hurt them. But I'd like to see some states' attorney generals out there bringing charges against these folks. You know, that's what I'd like to see. Let's see some of the you know, Alvin Braggs, if you will, and the Republican AGs out there saying, okay, this guy's guilty of a crime. Let's start charging them. Let's start charging these people now, not later. Now.
And the state AGs can do that, particularly in states where the Bidens had business actions at the banking level, and they committed fraud. Yes. I know Mississippi's one of the states I believe that they were involved in. Delaware is obviously going to be another one, so Delaware will be a little bit more tricky because, you know, the Biden's
blue
own
state.
Delaware.
Yep.
But in a place like Mississippi, where they've had, a lot of business transactions, and all you really need to go after any of that is, if you remember from Tucker Carlson, the Tony Bobulinski. He's got
right.
all the receipts.
That's
so
right.
does Congress. Congress has all the receipts too. And I understand that they have to be somewhat deliberate when they're doing this, but once they get enough information, like I said, put Garland on the spot, demand he come up to the Hill, present it in a public forum. You swear him in and say, here it all is, spell it out for him, and put him on national television and say, hey, what are you going to say about this? What are you going to do about this? This is all crimes that are committed, and you're not doing anything about it. So you got to put these people in the spotlight.
Luckily, with 33 Republican-controlled states, we have 2/3 of the 50 states. That should be enough to make an action if they won't take an action. So, well, folks, that's going to do it for us. We are at the 1 hour mark. We appreciate you joining in. Please stay tuned again. Thursday evening, 7 p.m. We're going to have a special show with individuals running for the South Carolina GOP chair. Tune in. And if you are running for any office, whether it's the chair, second vice, whatever the case may be, please, national EC, please join in, and we will try to get you involved in answering questions. That's all I've got. As always, Godspeed. God bless. We'll see you next time.